This is Tanz.
And this is Jax with Trust No
Motherfuckers. We've got a voicemail from Jennifer from Orlando.
Hi, this is Jennifer from Orlando, Florida. And boy, Tanz and Jax, do I have a story for you. This isn't actually something that I experienced, but my very close friend has a little really cute retail shop. And she likes to go, to those trade shows. And so she would go to those trade shows and find like the best stuff. Like her shop is so cute. She has all the best stuff. And so she goes to these trade shows like once or twice a year, when she can swing it. And she went to this trade show and she takes all of these checks with her because everyone wants to be paid right then. And so she takes her checkbook and goes and finds like the cutest stuff, the stuff that's just going to sell off the shelf. And she writes all these checks to all these vendors, these just random vendors. You won't believe what happened. One of the checks that she wrote, someone took that check and washed it and made copies of it and mailed it out to other people. And they were like running some kind of scam where they would mail the check out to someone and then that person was supposed to mail back them some sort of money or something. I don't know how they made money from it, but they made all of these check copies and sent them out all over the United States. And my friend started having to pay all of these checks, and it was just such a nightmare for her. She had to call her bank and get everything shut down. And they told her that it's because she was using these blank, boring checks. And so Tanz and Jax, make sure all your listeners know that they need to use the checks with like the pretty holograms on them, because then no one can make a copy of those. And you can just those are super secure. So use the fancy checks. They cost a little more, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah.
Very interesting. Actually, talked to some bankers about this topic, and the bankers were saying that, yes, indeed, paper checks are actually fraught with problems. And they encourage people to use like bill pay. But the problem we have with bill pay is we use paper checks, the owner or manager signs it, and so they know how the money's being used. We start using bill pay, then we have to have some way for the owners or managers to still see what we're paying, because we're not supposed to have the power as bookkeepers or office managers. We're not supposed to have the power to transfer and move money around, and bill pays moving money around without anybody intervening, right? What did you hear from this story, Tanz? What would you like to say about this situation?
I think it's bullshit that people pull that stuff, but I don't know, man. Pay for the secure checks. I have it set up with a client that before we pay bills, I send an email for that week with the screenshot of, your bills that you're going to plan on paying in QuickBooks right now, and then he approves that that's paid. So if it ever came back, he didn't think I paid something or didn't pay or paid something that I shouldn't have, I could pull that up and be like, this is what was sent. And I can do that as a backup in QuickBooks also by pulling the report. It's just another way to have them sign off beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes he's like, why do I gotta do this? I trust you. I'm like, man, let's just do an extra step.
That's such a good point, because the whole trust thing, right? Like we might work with an organization and they completely trust us, as they should. Right. But the policies they have in place, the policies that we should help put in place, are ones in which we assume that the person shouldn't really be trusted, right? We have to assume that the trust no motherfucker is going to be sitting in the chair after us. And we don't want to implement systems or organically grow processes that then put the organization in trouble.
Correct.
Yeah, the whole washing of checks and using routing numbers. There's so many scams we could talk about. We're teaching you how to stay away from that. And one of the things is really paying close attention to that bank account, right? like noticing what checks are clearing and what's going on, and not letting reconciliations wait and only doing them twice a year. Like, you got to stay on it in case something like this happens. You have to catch it early on.
Correct.
Yeah. Have you ever had fraud going on that you found out about or heard about later in organizations that have had the privilege of working with you, Tanz?
I have actually several of them. One company, it was their accountant, which was the bookkeeper. It was supposed to be the bookkeeper, but he was an accountant, but working for them as a third party. He was entering everything in, and it was looking like taxes were being paid when in fact taxes were not paid. And since this business owner trusted his accountant, they were signing off on the 941s and the 940s. So he had no clue that it was not paid. And his actual bookkeeper / accountant had said, no, I didn't know anything about that. But as we know, when you're entering it in the books and you're reconciling, there's no way for you not to know that that hasn't been paid. So I called the old bookkeeper out, which he was already done when I was brought in, but I had to do cleanup. They owed the IRS almost $1 million. They ended up going kaput, but that business owner is a prime example that some people should not be running a business if they don't know how to read their financials or have a clue about maybe they should be signing the 941s.
Yep.
So I always have my owners signing the 941, the end of year 940, showing them, like explaining to them, look, here's no balance, everything's been paid, you're all good. It's definitely, it happens a lot more than I ever thought it did.
Well, that's very nice for the caller to pop in and tell us a fraud story, because boy, do we've got some fraud stories to share.
Yeah.
So you'll have to check out other episodes on that topic. But thank you, caller.
And that's the news in our neck of the woods. I'm Jax, and this is the TNMF News. This is Tanz signing off and sending you all good vibes.